Hey guys, today I want to talk about something that almost nobody shares. And when people speak about learning English or learning any other language, they always show you the exciting parts. They always show you the progress, the confidence, the opportunities. But behind of all that, there's a hidden side. There's a darker side that is not so easy to admit, but that everyone who learns a language eventually faces. My name is Julian. I am from Argentina, and my native language is Spanish. And I'm really passionate about learning languages. I've been on this journey for a couple of years, and even though I love it, I've also lived, the frustration, the doubts, and the silence that nobody talks about. That's what I call the dark side of learning a language. And the truth is, it's not something to avoid. Like it's something you need to go through it if you really want to grow. So today I want to talk openly about it, not to scare you, but to show you that this dark side is not a sign of failure, but it's a part of the path. One of the first things you face is frustration. It doesn't matter how motivated you are, how many apps you download, how many hours you put in. Sooner or later, frustration will hit you. And you spend days memorizing vocabulary, and then when you try to speak, the words just disappear. You repeat grammar rules, until your head hurts, but when you actually need them, they don't come out right. And suddenly you think, what's the point of doing all of this? And I've been there more times than I can count. And every single time I thought, well, maybe I'm just not good at languages. Maybe I'm not talented enough. But then I realized something important, and that is that, frustration doesn't mean that you are bad at learning. Frustration means that you are in the middle, like of learning, and it's like the proof that your brain is stretching, it's trying to make sense of something new. And it's like when you go to the gym and your muscles hurt, that pain is not really weakness. It's the sign that you are getting stronger. And with languages, frustration is that same kind of pain. It's uncomfortable, but it's a good sign. It means that you are moving forward. And, even if you can't see the progress yet, another dark moment that almost everyone faces is comparison. And it's worse now because of social media. You open Instagram, you open TikTok or YouTube, and there's always someone speaking perfectly, someone younger than you or someone who seems to learn in half the time. And without noticing, like you start measuring yourself with their progress. And I used to do this constantly. Like every time I heard someone with a perfect accent, I felt like a failure, or like if my pronunciation wasn't exactly like theirs, I thought I wasn't good enough. But here's what I eventually understood. You have to understand that comparison is a trap. You're looking at someone else chapter 20 while you are in still chapter 3. You don't see their mistakes. You don't see their hours of practice, their struggles. You only see the highlight reel. And the more you compare, the less you value your own progress, and you stop noticing that you already understand more than you did last month. And you also ignore like that you can hold a conversation that maybe wasn't possible, I don't know, a year ago. So and there's also something else, and that is that comparison steals your motivation. That's why I stopped doing it. And you have to understand that your only real competition is yourself. There's also that terrifying moment when you actually have to use the language. You've studied, you watch videos, you practice in your head, but when the time comes to speak, your body betrays you. Your hands sweat, your mind goes blank, your accent feels too heavy, and you freeze. And this anxiety is one of the darkest part of learning a language, because it makes you feel powerless. The words just doesn't come out. But like fear, it's like fear doesn't let you use them. Fear doesn't let you express the ways you want. And I used to feel this every time I tried to speak English. Even simple things like, I don't know, introduce myself gave me anxiety. My voice will shake, and if someone didn't understand me, I feel like ashamed. But over time, I learned something important, and that is that fear doesn't really disappear by waiting, but it disappears only by facing it, again and again. And every time you force yourself to speak, even if you make mistakes, you are training your brain to stay calm. And I stopped chasing perfect pronunciation, and I started chasing connection. I realized my goal was not to sound native. My goal was to be understood, to connect with another person. And once I accept that, the anxiety started losing its power. Another part of the dark side of learning a language is loneliness. Especially if you're learning without living in an English-speaking country. You practice alone in your room. You repeat words to yourself. Maybe your family or friends don't really understand like why you are so obsessed with it, and it feels kind of isolating. And you actually, sometimes you wonder if it's even worth it. But I realized that this loneliness is actually a secret advantage, because those hours of silence training when nobody's watching, it's like they are the foundation of fluency. They are the invisible work behind every success. Think about like athletes, they spend years training alone in the gym before they ever step onto the stage, and learning a language is kind of the same. The lonely hours, the repetition, the conversations with yourself in front of the mirror, that's where you build strength. That's how you build confidence and fluency, actually. And like one day, when you finally speak with confidence, people will think like it happened suddenly, but you will know, it didn't. And you will know that it was built in silence, in all those lonely hours. I'm sorry. And there's another truth that can feel discouraging, and is that learning a language never really ends. Even after years, you still find words you don't know, and that makes you feel like frustrated. And if you expect if you really expect perfection, that realization, I'll make mistakes in this video, I don't care, it's okay. Like if you really expect perfection, that realization can break you, because the goal of being done will never arrive. I used to obsess about perfection. Like if I made a mistake or if my accent showed, I felt like I had failed. But I learned, the hard way, that perfection is not only impossible, but it's dangerous. It leads you to frustration and paralysis. And what I do now is different. I still aim high. I still try to get as close to native like speech as possible, because I want to push myself. But I no longer see mistakes as failure. I see them as feedback. And perfection is not the goal. The goal is growth. And once you accept that, you stop being afraid of mistakes. You start using them as tool to move forward. So yeah, there's a dark side of to learning a language, and there is a frustration, comparison, anxiety, loneliness, and the feeling that it never ends. But here's the reality: those those are not signs of weakness. They are part of the process. They are the way you have to live if you really want to grow stronger. And the dark side is what filters the people who give up from the people who transform their lives. And if you're still here, trying to get fluent and trying to get really good at learning English, just don't avoid the dark side. Embrace it, because on the other side of that struggle, there's freedom, there's opportunity, and there's a version of yourself that you don't even recognize yet. A version of yourself that is confident, capable, and limitless. Thanks so much for watching until the end. I really hope this video gave you some value and maybe a different perspective on your own journey. So let me know in the comments what you think about all this. I would love to hear your experiences. And yeah, because we are all going through this in our own way. So if this helped you even a little bit, don't forget to share it with someone who might need to hear it. So yeah, see you in the next one, guys.